This video is going to be the first video of my soup series. And to kick it all off, I wanted to start with the classic tomato soup. When you think about barbecue, you don't really think about tomato soup. But if you guys have been watching my other videos, you know I like to treat barbecue as a cooking technique, similar to frying, baking, or sous vide. They're all different cooking techniques, and I believe that barbecue is one of them. So in this video, I want to share with you guys a very simple tomato soup recipe that I think is perfect for these cold weather months. And to accompany it, we're definitely going to make a grilled cheese. So with that being said, let's get cooking. For this version of tomato soup, I'm going to be making a vegan smoked tomato soup. Now don't let the word vegan make you rage quit this video. I promise you it doesn't lack in flavor. My neighbor Susan is a vegan, but she has been one of my biggest supporters since day one, even when I was doing pop-ups. So this recipe is for her. Give her a shout out in the comment section. For the base of the soup, I'm going to start with half an onion, some garlic, and a small apple. Just kidding. That's just so I don't get hangry while cooking. Peel about 5 to 7 cloves of garlic and roughly chop the onion into big old chunks and set them aside. The tomatoes we're going to be using today are these canned whole peeled tomatoes. Why use canned tomatoes instead of fresh? Well, it's currently winter and I live in the Midwest, but also because they are more consistent and picked at peak freshness before being canned. I like to find ones with minimal ingredients to keep the base as pure as possible. I try to pour the can of tomatoes through a strainer so I can save the juices for later, but it didn't really do anything. So skip that step and put all the tomatoes into a pan with your peeled garlic and chopped onion. With a sharp knife, pierce and scrape the tomatoes to create a little bit more surface area for more smoke absorption. Now let's get our soup base nice and smoky. Today I'm going to be using my primitive 250, but to maximize the flavors of our soup base, we're going to be using all the secret ingredients, starting with Fogo lump charcoal, Korean newspaper, and for the first time on this channel, we have Chud's snake nests. If you use all three of these together with the 250 and your food isn't banging, I'm sorry, that's on you. I'm gonna get this fire ripping hot. I want the tomatoes, garlic, and onion to get a little bit of color and get a nice mellow smoky flavor. Once the fire is hot, I'm gonna slide the pan close to the front so it gets a little extra heat. These will sit there for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Halfway through, I'll give it a stir to get smoke on all parts. And cooking temp will be anywhere from 300 to 350. After that time, this is what it looks like. You can see the top layer has almost a matte look to it due to the convection in the smoker and concentration of those flavors. The onion and garlic has a more yellowish tint due to the smoke, and the edges of the pan look like a well caramelized crust from a pan pizza. At this point, I'm going to cover the pan with plastic wrap until tomorrow. This will help contain more of the smoked flavor like you would do when doing smoked cheese. But if you plan on eating it the same day, you can definitely skip this step. And after a day in the fridge, this is what it looks like. Not much has changed, but it's a little bit more solidified after chilling overnight. I'm going to stick this in the oven for about 20 minutes just to warm it through. Once it's warm, I'm going to pull out the almighty Vitamix. Scoop all the tomatoes, onion, garlic, and then about 3 cups of low sodium veggie stock. Start it on low and slowly build up the speed as all the vegetables start to become more incorporated. If you don't have a high powered blender, you can still do this with a stick blender. I would recommend doing a third or a fourth of the batch at a time so you can get an even consistency. Now that everything is smooth, it's time to add some fat. Since we're keeping this a vegan tomato soup, I'm using about 25 grams or 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil instead of cream or milk to give us a nice silky texture. And you can see as it blends on high speed, it changes the color of the soup, almost as if there was cream added. Just to make sure the consistency is extra smooth, I'm going to pass this through a strainer. I don't think this step is really necessary, especially if you use a high powered blender and you let it go on high for a good length of time. But if you are using a stick blender and you want to ensure a very luxurious texture, I would recommend this step. Okay, now this is the most important step. As you guys may have noticed, I have not seasoned this at all. To be quite honest, I'm not sure if I did this on purpose to make sure it wasn't going to be too salty early on, but here we are. I'm going to season this with salt, sugar, and a lot of black pepper. This took a lot more seasoning than I had anticipated. Even though there's salt in the canned tomatoes, the amount of olive oil that we added needs salt for balance. With all the amount of tomatoes that have a lot of acidity, needs a good amount of sugar. And the pepper, well, I just like extra pepper. But it did really make the soup pop a bit more. I really wish I could tell you how much to add, but in this situation, I really think you need to go by taste to find the balance that you're looking for. And at the moment when I'm about to serve a bowl of soup, I'm going to add a few drops of the sherry vinegar that you can mix into the soup for some brightness. This super luxurious vegan tomato soup is now done. I'm gonna keep this on the stove with the lid on, keep it on a low heat while we work on the next step. I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I'm a huge movie buff. Around the time I was making my decision on whether or not I should move to Texas, I saw the movie Chef. The movie was a huge inspiration to me. There's a scene where they stop by Franklin Barbecue to get some brisket, and I knew it was a sign from God that I needed to move. So in honor of that movie, I'm going to try to recreate the grilled cheese sandwich. We're going to start with 2 slices of sourdough bread cut to 1.5 centimeters to 2 centimeters thick. If it's too thick, the cheese won't melt enough and the bread won't warm through. If it's too thin, the cheese will melt too fast before the bread toasts properly. The cheeses that we're going to be using are yellow cheddar, Gruyere, and Parmesan. The recipe also includes white cheddar, but I didn't want to spend extra money on another cheese that has the same flavor. And now that it's beautifully placed, I realized I should have placed it on top of the bread. This just gives me an excuse to answer a question I've always had. Is it better to toast your bread with butter or mayo? I'm going to get an even coat of unsalted butter and mayo on these half slices of bread, making sure to cover it edge to edge, and let's give it a light toast. They both got the bread really crispy, which is to be expected, but what about the taste? The butter is just a really classic flavor that you expect. The mayo, on the other hand, is much more flavorful because there are other ingredients in it. And obviously the unsalted butter tastes under-seasoned in comparison, but is more flavor better? I'm not sure. It was a bit confusing to me. I found it to be a little bit greasy. And in terms of taste, I prefer the classic nuttiness of the butter. I've definitely seen people use both mayo and butter, but I would say a nice middle ground would be just to use salted butter instead. But like I say all the time about food, it's all about preference. So in the comments below, let me know which one you prefer. Are you team mayo or team butter? To start, I'm going to butter both slices of bread, but only on one side. Into my carbon steel pan, I'm going to place a slice of bread, butter side down, and then build the layers of cheese like I did earlier. Then place the other slice of bread, butter side down, next to it. And we're going to cook this grilled cheese over medium to medium low heat. After a few minutes, the cheese will start to sweat a little bit, but it's definitely not close to being done. And the sourdough that's placed to the side is starting to develop some color and texture, but it's not quite there yet either. Once the cheese looks semi-melted on top, it's ready to top it with the other slice of bread. This is going to help the cheese melt all the way through. And I apologize, I think I did that step while the camera wasn't recording, but at the end, this is what the grilled cheese should look like. The bread has a bronze golden color, the cheese on the edges have melted together, and even though the evenness of the toast on the bread is questionable, the sound of the crustiness is not. When it comes to sandwiches, I'm big on ratios. I want the bites to be balanced and consistent all the way through. To me, this is the perfect amount of cheese, and the tang from the sourdough balances out the rich fattiness of the cheese. Now that we finished the sandwich, let's put it all together. Tomato soup is always so comforting and nostalgic. It's simple but oddly complex. The right balance of salt, sugar, and acid is really important when there are only a few ingredients. This is infinitely better than any canned soup that you can buy. And with the addition of our grilled cheese, I'm not sure if there's anything more comforting than this meal. This recipe is a good base, but get creative with it. So feel free to use cream instead of olive oil, add herbs like basil, and if you really want to get food influencery, make grilled cheese croutons and sprinkle them in. Cooking is about creation and creativity, but being able to do the basics first is really important before you get creative. And even with all this being said, really the only opinion I care about was my neighbor Susan's. She said that the smoked tomato soup was exquisite and asked what pepper I used because it really balanced it out. So that's the end of this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is just part 1 of a 4-part soup series. And next week, we're gonna be working on a smoked French onion soup. So if that's something that you guys are into, definitely make sure you click the bell notification to know when that video comes out. If you like this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one.